A very good afternoon to one and all present here, and for everyone who has joined us throughout this entire IVDR celebration week. Today, we are here for the closing ceremony of IVDR Celebration Week, brought to you by Medidia, powered by Global Regulatory Services, and in association with our resource partners, which includes Galway Chambers, Middling Midlands, Afford Theory Development, Xenon Health Solutions, GS1 Ireland, Health Innovation Hub Ireland, Embassy of India, Dublin, Ireland. And together with our experts and all our resource partners, we want to make sure that you are hashtag IVDR ready. Well, in today's closing ceremony, we have a huge list of speakers, which includes Tara Fahy, who is a regulatory and quality consultant, and she will be giving us 5 takeaways focusing on IVD medical device and quality management systems. Next, we will be having Paul, who is our cybersecurity expert, and will be giving 5 takeaways focusing on cybersecurity of IoMT. Right after that, David, our ALAMD expert, that is artificial intelligence and machine learning as a medical device expert, who will give us 5 takeaways focusing on software as a medical device under in vitro diagnostic regulations. And right after David, we will have Marie, who is again our regulatory and quality consultant at Medidia, and she will give us 5 takeaways focusing on economic operators under IVDR and how to deal with them. And not to forget, at last, we have Greer Deal, Director of Global Regulatory Services and Medidia, who shall give us 5 takeaways on overall IVDR transition. Well, that's all about today's flow of sessions and the different takeaways. At any point, if any of our audiences have any questions, feel free to use the comments box on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on YouTube. All are being monitored, and I would be happy to pull those questions up and make sure that they are answered. If there is something that you miss out during this session, you can always log in back on any of our platforms, and the recording of all the videos under IVDR Celebration Week are available right now. And if there is any question that you would like to know more in detail, feel free to drop us an email at mdd@mddltd.com, and our experts will be there to give you the answers. Well, that was quite a big of an intro, but definitely, hello Greer, hello Paul, hello Tara, David, and Marie. How are you keeping this afternoon?
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Nice to hear from you all. And yes, so definitely let's head in and make sure that our audiences get their takeaways while we will be closing the IVDR Celebration Week today. So at first, I think, Tara, would you be able to give us 5 takeaways focusing on IVD medical device and quality management systems?
Okay, you have the screen there, Jay, yeah? Perfect, thank you. Okay, so we're discussing here the ISO 13485 2016 QMS and the positive takeaways. So going straight into it here. Okay, so the ISO 13485, the purpose and is it mandatory? So the ISO 13485 is designed to be used by organizations involved in the design, production, installation, and the servicing of medical devices, IVDR, and related services. The benefits of ISO 13485 outlines the quality management system standards for medical devices, including efficient cycle times, less waste, and a reputation for top quality devices that can spread throughout the medical industry. ISO 13485 2016 is still valid and standard of choice for the medical device and IVD regulations. It is specific for the in vitro medical device and the medical device industry. The concept of the QMS has been extended to economic operators. The requirement for the QMS is included in the Conformity Assessment Annex 9, 10, and 11. Please consider ISO certification costs when you do determine the classification. Just because if it's a class A, you can still, I suppose basically go with the certification, even though it's not mandatory for you. But I would advise you if I suppose you have the budget there to use it. Because it is an expensive process. The standard only becomes mandatory if your device is higher than a class A, which is minimal risk. So classes B, C, and D will require assessment and certification of a notified body for medical devices. Other companies will do business if they know you are serious about what you do. So you can gain more customers if you have an ISO 13485 because they know your system is working and the trust, there's more, I suppose, trust there with your client. and the competition out there as well. What are the requirements? And ISO 13485 2016 specifies requirements for the quality management system to produce an ISO medical device and related services that constantly meet customer and applicable regulatory requirements. The requirements of the ISO 13485 2016 are applicable to organisation regardless of the size and regardless of their type, except where stated. Wherever requirements are specified as applying to medical devices, we're now talking about the IVDR, the requirements apply equally to associated service supplied by the organisation. The ISO 13485 structure is split into 8 sections, with the first 3 being introductory and then the last 5 containing the mandatory requirements for the quality management system. Here's what the 5 main sections are about. So these are our clauses. We're talking about our main clauses. The ISO 13485 consists of clauses with supporting subclauses. The requirements to be applied to your quality management system, QMS, are covered between clause 4 and clause 8. So starting from 4 to 8, quality management system. These are your general requirements, your documentation, your quality manual, your medical device file, and the control of documents. Management responsibility, the quality policy, your customer focus, their needs, what are the requirements? The quality objectives, the management review, responsibility, authorities and communication, management representative, resource management, staff, infrastructure, process equipment, logistics, work environment, and contamination control, people in the right place at the right time, production realization, planning of product realization, design and development, purchasing, installation activities, servicing activities, identification, traceability, control of monitoring and measuring equipment, and so on. Measurement analysis and improvement, customer feedback, which is vital, complaint handling, reporting to the authorities, internal audits, non-conforming product and processes, data analysis, CAPA actions. The differences between the ISO 13485 and EN ISO 13485. EN ISO 13485 is a parallel standard that is issued in the European Union for the purpose of creating a QMS in the medical device industry for the use in the European Union. The requirements of these standards are identical and entirely of the ISO 13485 2016 standard. It is included in the EN ISO 13485 2016 document. However, the European version of the standard also includes several invaluable tables that align the ISO 13485 2016 requirements to the 3 EU directives. Now, since these directives have obviously, because of the new MDR and IVDR, they've now been replaced. So, however, the release of the European Union Medical Device Regulation in May 2017, those regulations have been superseded with the previous directives. So it is expected that a new version will be released showing closer alignment with the EU MDR and IVDR. Less waste and customer satisfaction reputation. By using the approach outlined in the ISO 13485, your company will be able to identify and reduce waste within and between processes, reduce errors, avoid rework, resulting in greater efficiency and cost savings. Also keeping your customers away from the door. That's not a bad thing. A happy customer will leave you alone. So it's vital to always have, your customers and your clients come first. And they will, they're trustworthy and they have no reason to be concerned. You should always be thinking, how could I do better and also be more environmentally friendly? Because let's face it, environmentally friendly is pretty much bouncing around all over the place, and you need to be very clear and minded about that also. Customer satisfaction is key today with the huge global market and the size of the competitors and its beast. So customers know what they want and what they need, but one of their main needs is certified supplier. So customers will keep coming back for business and obtain new customers along the way. Therefore, ISO 13485 will potentially increase your revenue. Reputation, as we all know, years to build one, but so quickly to destroy it. It's that simple. ISO certification is an expensive process, but one thing is for sure, you can rely on whether good or bad, that you have a system that is monitored and that you can continue to produce safe and effective devices.
Thank you so much, Tara, for all these quick takeaways. And I'm sure
I apologize for running through that, but I do realize it's 5 or 10 minutes and there's more people after me.
No, definitely. I'm sure all the experts have enough of time to share it. And thank you for giving all your valuable insights to our audiences who are watching us live and who will also be watching the recording of this closing ceremony. Yeah, thank you once again, Tara. And quickly for all our audiences, if at any point you have any questions regarding the topics being discussed or IVD regulations, feel free to use the comment section and ask us your questions. And don't forget to share all of these information with anyone who is looking out for guidance, especially with in vitro diagnostic regulations. Well, now moving on, we have Paul, who is a cybersecurity expert. Paul, will you be able to give us 5 takeaways focusing on cybersecurity of IoMTs?
Yeah, sure, I will. So good afternoon, everybody. My first takeaway would be to say that demonstrate your cybersecurity commitment. Because remember, if your device is responsible for any security breaches, it will most definitely harm your products and possibly your company's reputation. It's also important to demonstrate your commitment to cybersecurity to all prospective client organizations. And the way you can do that is to achieve the security certifications for your target market and highlight those achievements to your customers in the pre-sale stage. Just also remember that if you're vulnerable to any basic attacks, it does mark you out for more in-depth attention from cyber criminals. So it's known that if they can find that you've got one little chink, then they'll exploit that and then find more, and they're into your system, and that's it. My second takeaway is cybersecurity should be considered right from the start of development. Ensure security policies are written and approved by the board. Gather evidence all the way through the device life cycle. And encourage secure design principles from the onset. Remember to retest and verify that security measures are still effective after any software changes. And document all tests, results, and any vulnerabilities found. You need to also consider the relationship between safety and security as they relate to risk. Do not let patient safety be compromised due to security issues, whether they be related to missed or ignored vulnerabilities or being overzealous with security measures. And that is something to bear in mind, that's the point actually. My third takeaway is mind the gap basically, and that is identify your target markets and the security requirements stated for those markets. Then, prior to any certification submissions, carry out a gap analysis, and that's between the current security policies of your own and the various cybersecurity requirements of the new certifications and guidances for your target markets. So those should include the MDCG, Cyber Essentials, DSPT, DTAC, etc. And ensure you close any gaps found and then make your certification submission. And this is an area where we could probably help you out quite a lot, actually. Secure by design. Ensure that you implement the secure by design practices in your device development. This is something I spoke about earlier this week. And remember that the security risk management process has the same elements as the safety risk management, all to be documented in the security risk management plan. The process elements are security risk analysis, security risk evaluation, security risk control, and evaluation of residual risk and reporting. So when a security risk and control measure could have a possible impact on safety and effectiveness, then it should be included in the safety risk assessment. And finally, remember the defense in-depth approach to security described earlier in the week. My last one is cybersecurity and responsibility and expectation of other stakeholders. Remember, it's important to recognize the roles and expectations of all the stakeholders, such as the manufacturers, suppliers, healthcare providers, patients, integrators, and operators. All of these actors share responsibility for ensuring a secured environment for the benefit of patient safety. For example, having agreements contemplating responsibility are one option to ensure that all parties understand the joint responsibility of managing devices in the medical IT network, thus ensuring security of the device and any data within the device or in transit to and from that device. So what I was trying to say there is that you can't really just throw this device over the fence and hope that the integrators will put it in safely and securely, because going back to point one, if they do that and your device is responsible for a breach of data or worse, then either you will suffer for that and your reputation will be harmed, as well as possibly any patient safety. Thank you. That's any questions, please let us know.
Thank you so much, Paul, for giving these quick takeaways, and I'm sure our audiences took out their pen and paper and made notes out of it. And yes, thank you so much once again, Paul. And moving on, David, who is our AL/AMD expert. When I talk about AL/AMD, it means artificial intelligence and machine learning as a medical device. And David, will you be able to share your 5 takeaways focusing on software as a medical device under in vitro diagnostics?
Okay, thank you for a good introduction, Jay, and good afternoon to everyone. Right. My 5 takeaways are quite simple. Right, I'm going to say the really obvious. Start at the beginning. Right, don't jump into a project halfway through with things decided. So first things first, you need to check is your software or your IVD product, is it actually a medical device? Right, does it comply with the requirements of the IVDR regulations? Have you read the latest MDGC guidance document? Okay, that's Medical Device Coordinating Group. They've spec'd it out in there how to classify a software product. Read it, understand it, act on it. Right? Okay. It could go to a whole load of extent. Your device as a medical device for IVDR, and it turns out it's not. Right? It could fall under the MDR, or it could actually be a wellness product. So make sure you get that right. Then once you've got over that hurdle, as part of starting at the beginning, plan. Right? Planning is really important, and I'll come on to a reason for that later. Right? But do your planning. It's going to sound a really idiot question, thing to say is understand your user requirements. Right? Make sure you have a good understanding of what they are, and at the beginning of your project, as part of your planning exercise, get rid of any ambiguity or misunderstanding. Right? Because that could cost you a lot of time at the end of the project, right? When you realize you've missed out a user requirement. So, as I said, really easy, start at the beginning. Right. Number 2, right, is the importance of the correct software classification. I'm not talking about, A, B, C, D rules in, what device you are under IVDR. IEC 62304 has a safety level classification from A to C, where A is the lowest and C is the highest. Okay, and depending on where your software falls in that classification, dictates how much documentation you require to back up your medical device product. Okay, so that becomes important, and again, I'll talk about that a bit later. Right. My third giveaway, and this goes into what Tara was talking about earlier, is ISO 13485 2016. Right, clause 7.3 is the design and development clause. Right, and there are seven main stages in that, ranging from start at the beginning, design and development planning, stage 1. Stage 2 is when you start to do your detailed design. Stage 3 is your output from that detailed design. Stages 4 and 5 are verification and validation, and then once you got to the end, your design transfer, and in case of software, it's moving from the test environment to the live environment, and how you do your deployment, and then how you do your configuration control. If you get a change during your design and development project, right, you have to go back to the beginning, such as what Paul's mentioned, to make sure that you haven't messed up your cyber security, for example, or you haven't messed up something else, because there's a requirement in 13485 for design control, and it's been put in there because companies haven't been traditionally very good at controlling changes during the design process. Okay, so make sure that you can align your software development to those stages I've just mentioned. Giveaway number 4 is understand the regulatory framework that you're trying to operate in. Okay, you might be a new startup company, or you might be an old, more established company, but the regulations around which you operate in are continuing to change, and that may be, because the IVDR is for Europe, right? But if you want to sell your products into other markets, their regulations are also changing. UK has gone off on its own path, right? And we'll come back to that later, right? But you're not only talking about software in 62304, you've got to overlay 13485 clause 7.3. You've got risk management 14971, and that's changed recently to 2019 version. You've got to understand usability, right, and how your users will interact with your software or your IVD product. If you're in the digital healthcare space, then you've got a whole load of requirements around the actual environment that you're operating in, such as the NHS Digital Toolkit, or the Europeans have their own equivalent, how to make sure that your software will operate safely and correctly. Okay. Giveaway number 5 is software regulations are changing, right? Look at the direction of travel. You might be designing your product now for launching 2023 or 4, but look at the way the regulations are changing. Sort of 10 years ago, there was virtually no regulation on software, right? Then 62304 came out, and there are there's 82304. There's a whole host of other regulations around software and its usage. The FDA are producing guidance documents now to replace their sort of level of concern software safety classification to bring it into line with IEC 62304, because it's a harmonized standard in Europe and it's a consensus standard in the States, but they're removing the requirement for level of concern and just leaving it on what we talked about earlier, which is the correct software safety classification. Okay, so that means that European companies will be better off, right? They don't have to do two health checks, 2 safety checks, and worry about how the FDA have categorized software slightly different. As Jay said at the beginning of my introduction, AL and ML, right, artificial learning and machine learning, is new to medical, is relatively new to medical devices. The FDA have published guidelines about how AL and ML should be used in our medical device context. Read those guidelines, because sooner or later the standards are going to catch up, right? And they're setting what in inverted commas is state of the art. And when you go to get your product approved, you need these. You've got to be state of the art, right? The MHRA, FDA, and Health Canada have produced good learning practice for medical devices, right? So they have put in yet another framework on top to say, well, this is what you should do to demonstrate to us that your AI or your machine learning is safe to be released onto the market. So that's dealing with data sets, etc. right? Is your data set biased? Where did you get your data set from? Is it secure, etc., right? And lastly, but leastly in this, it is really how do you get your design methodology that you're using, whether it's agile, V development, or whatever, Confluence, whatever development environment you're doing, how do you superimpose that onto 62304 and IEC 13485 clause 7.3? They're the areas that we can help you with, right? And other regulatory issues regarding software. So just like St. Paul did in the Bible, I'll just repeat what they are. Start at the beginning, the importance of correct software classification, IEC 62304, 2016, clause 7.3. Understand how that fits into your development world, right? Understand the other regulatory frameworks that go around that, right? And remember, keep an eye out for these guidance documents and how they're moving forward and how it's going to affect your development in the future. Right, so I'm now free to pass over to my next colleague.
Thank you so much, David, for enlightening all our audiences. And again, I would re-mention for all our audiences is that if there are any questions that you would like us to answer, use the comments box, put your comments, ask your questions, and we'll be happy to pull them up or maybe answer them after this session. All right, so moving on from David, I would now like to invite Marie, who is Regulatory and Quality Consultant at IVDR, and who shall give 5 takeaways focusing on economic operators under IVDR and how to deal with them. Over to you, Marie.
Thanks, Jay. Good afternoon, everyone. So just to start off, I suppose with the IVDR, it places greater emphasis on economic operators, so clarity around who they are, the roles and responsibilities within the supply chain. There are requirements for every economic operator involved in the medical device sectors, and they are clearly defined. So I suppose when you mention economic operator, this is referring to entities that share the duty of ensuring compliance to medical devices. They import, manufacture, or distribute for sale in the EU. So referring to manufacturers, authorized representative, distributors, and importers. So there is a need to be clear on who the economic operators are in your supply chain and what your specific role is, whatever it may be. So really just organization must be clear on each economic operator within the supply chain. Jumping on to the second point really, and kind of ties around the roles and responsibilities. So with the IVDR, it does provide greater legal clarity on the various roles and responsibilities. So ultimately, the manufacturer is responsible for the medical device being compliant with the relevant legislation, but the various economic operators do play a part in ensuring that the safety and performance of the device is compliant throughout the supply chain. Examples of the obligations include proper storage and handling, traceability, reporting requirements, verification of aspects of compliance with the device with the EU IVDR, including CE marking, the declaration of conformities, IFU, and labeling requirements, and among other obligations. So along with that, economic operators are required to cooperate with manufacturers and authorized reps, and also with the competent authorities in relation to any issues that might arise and corrective actions in relation to those. So it does show that there's a significant strengthening of the regulatory process in comparison to directives, and that there's greater legal clarity on each economic operator. So third, really, and how it links is resources. So depending on the size of the organization, it's important that adequate and sufficiently trained resources are available within the organization, and depending on what EU economic operator you are, and that there are robust systems in place to be able to fulfill their obligations under the regulation. Kind of as mentioned already, the IVDR does place specific obligations on operators throughout the supply chain, and this is including the distributors and operators to make sure that the products are compliant and any issues are addressed effectively. And with this, there's increased requirements for traceability and complaint handling. So companies are required to have and implement a QMS, so the quality management system, to be able to deliver on their obligations effectively and show that they're demonstrating, to their partners and to regulatory bodies. So just the impact really. So if not already completed, looking at the transition and just ensuring to take all economic operators into consideration during the gap analysis and transition, and not maybe just focus on what your role is within supply chains. It's important to really look at the full supply chain and the relationship then between each economic operator. There is increased information available defining the roles and responsibilities, and showing really the requirement for manufacturers to include their quality system. And looking then at transition time, so with the transition plan, again, it's kind of a repetition here, but just ensure to include each economic operator within the supply chain, how they are impacted and what needs to be incorporated to ensure compliance. You should really take advantage of the transition time to implementation, making sure that appropriate agreements are in place that outline the clear roles and responsibilities, having these systems and robust processes in place to be able to tackle the new regulatory requirements under the IVDR. And if it isn't the case, to seek professional help, and something that MIDID and GRS are able to provide. So in a nutshell, really, for economic operators to be aware that there are increased responsibilities and mandatory requirements under the IVDR. And really, so mainly for the key takeaways or obligations are under Articles 10, 11, 13, and 14 for each economic operator. And that's me, quite quick. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie, for giving us very quick insights on the key economic operators. And yes, again, for all our audiences, the recording of all the sessions that took place under IVDR Celebration Week are now available on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on YouTube. So you can just go on and search #IVDR Ready, and all our session material and all the different articles that we will continue to post will be up for you to make sure that you and your companies are IVDR ready. Now, moving on, thank you, Marie, once again, and now passing on the dais and inviting Greer Deal, who is the Director at Global Regulatory Services and for Media, who shall give 5 takeaways on the overall IVDR transition. Over to you, Greer.
Thank you, Jay, and good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I was thinking about, oh my goodness, IVDR is such a huge subject, and my esteemed colleagues before me have given some very useful insights into their niche areas. But IVDR as a whole, so I thought, okay, so we're dealing with diagnostics, so I'm going to present to you today 5 Ds to reflect the D for diagnostics. So the first one actually is with reference to what David was mentioning earlier, is discuss. So what do you want your device to do? Where will it be used and by whom? So you're discussing that internally with your developers, etc. So you're deciding, what is the point of the device? And David also mentioned about, does it even have a medical purpose? So you need to check against the medical device regulation to check that it actually does have a medical purpose. And if it does, then you're looking to see if it actually meets the criteria, the definition of being a diagnostic under the IVD regulation. We've had it both ways in that companies can sort of think, okay, well, I think my device is a diagnostic, it's self-declared, so it's lowest risk, I'm going to slap a CE mark on it. No, that's not the way it's done. You've got to literally look at what is its main use, and where would you like it to be used. So your discussion will then mean that you're leading into defining. That's the second takeaway, define your device. So like I said, your medical purpose, does it meet the definition under the IVD regulation? So discuss internally will help you define your device, which then will determine your risk classification according to the regulations, if indeed it is a medical device and it's a diagnostic. So the risk classification under IVDR is now a rule-based approach. Under the old directive, it was a list-based approach. And so we now have 10 implementing rules and 4 risk classification groups, which is A, B, C, and D, A being the lowest risk classification, and you can self-declare if it's a class A, and D being the highest risk classification. And the risk classifications B to D, as was mentioned earlier, you do need to engage with a notified body. So once you've determined your risk classification, what is interesting is that a lot of diagnostics are actually going to be up classified. So if your diagnostic is already on the market, you've got to revisit, discuss, define and determine again to check whether your risk classification is actually appropriate under the IVD regulation. What we are seeing is that previously under the directive, there was about 10% of diagnostic companies who needed to engage with a notified body. Now with the IVD regulation, we're looking at 80 to 85% of diagnostic companies needing a notified body. So you've got to be clear about where your device is within the risk classifications. Because that's going to have a huge impact on retaining your device on the market or timelines to market. Because if you end up in a higher risk classification, a lot of time is actually going to be spent trying to find a notified body who will engage you as a client, but also their lead-in times, because there's not very many of them designated under the IVD regulation at the moment, and not that many are taking on new clients. So as soon as you know, get talking to your notified bodies, get engaged with them and get your contracts in place. It's a huge, huge change. So once you have your risk classification as well, you'll have a better understanding of the regulations themselves, and there's the standards and the guidances that you need to comply with. So this is basically mapping out your conformity pathway to commercialization. Now, I've mentioned regulation standards and guidances. David earlier made reference to MDCG. It's called guidance, but woe betide you if you don't comply, because the notified bodies actually expect companies to comply with those particular guidances, and they are really, really helpful. That's the whole point. They're there to bring clarity where perhaps aspects of the regulation are not so clear or could be misinterpreted. So they are there to help you. My fourth takeaway, the fourth D, is actually a double D. Don't delay. And I do have a slide of the key dates. Thank you, Jay. So I know a lot of diagnostic companies were hoping that the date of application would be delayed. No, absolutely not. It is still the 26th of May 2022, which is next month. So not long at all. But it's a soft application. And as you can see from the slide that's on your screen, the key date, 26th of May 2022, is your date of application. And for all diagnostic companies, doesn't matter what risk classification, doesn't matter if you're managing to declare under the directive and register under the directive just before the key date, the 26th of May 2022, there are certain requirements you still need to comply with under the new IVD regulation. And that's vigilance and post-market surveillance requirements going to apply to all IVDs, and also all new IVDs and your Class A's, which Class A being your lowest risk classification, non-sterile. Then you must comply as from the 26th of May 2022. The other key dates that are on your screen at the moment refer to the different risk classifications. So if you're a Class D, which is the highest risk classification, you have until the 26th of May 2025 before you need to achieve full compliance. I would encourage you to not use that as a deadline, try and get in there beforehand. But that's the timescale you've got for full compliance. Class C, you have until the 26th of May 2026, and then your Class A sterile and your Class Bs, you have until the 26th of May 2027. So these are key dates in your calendars depending on your risk classification. Thank you, Jay. And then my final and fifth takeaway, which is the fifth D, is delegate. So don't be afraid to delegate by seeking external help. You know, you're not alone. We're not working in silos. There's a whole network of really helpful and experienced professionals out there to help you. And I hope that we've demonstrated that all through this week with all our sessions. You know, with our resource partners, there's so much expertise there that you can tap into, and you can create the most amazing team to support you. So don't struggle and try and do it all in-house. You know, we appreciate small startups. You know, that resource and cash flow can be a challenge. But if you look at this as an investment into your company, into your future success, then you are going to reap the rewards. And I truly, truly believe that. So, you know, by delegating to seasoned professionals, you really are investing in the future success of your company and your business. And at the end of the day, you're making your diagnostics available to healthcare systems and patients around the world. So that's what we want. We need this innovative technology for all our benefit, for, you know, to look after our health. So our 5 Ds: discuss, define, determine, don't delay, and delegate.
Thank you so much, Greer, for all this information. And I'm sure all the manufacturers and different members of the ecosystem are planning to be IVDR ready. So with this, first of all, a big thanks to Greer, Paul, David, Marie, and Tara for joining in and giving us quick insights and takeaways for all our audiences. And definitely, I'm sure through these insights and through all this information which we have provided, companies are going to be better at implementation of in vitro diagnostic regulations. One thing that we all need to keep in mind is we have this unique hashtag of hashtag IVDR ready. And quite a lot of resources is revolving around this hashtag on different social platforms. And while the week, that is IVDR Celebration Week, comes to an end today, but this hashtag of hashtag IVDR ready, we are not going to close that down. That hashtag is going to continue forever. And whenever there is any important information that is going to come with regards to our in vitro diagnostic regulations, our social platforms and channels will be there with this hashtag and share out all the information to make sure that you are IVDR ready. So don't forget to add hashtag IVDR ready to your favorites list, and you will receive all the information automatically because our channels and platforms are publishing and keeping you up to date with all the relevant events and happenings revolving around the regulatory affairs. Well, with that, I would like to close this entire IVDR Celebration Week, and I would also invite Greer Deal, Director of Global Regulatory Services and Media, for a final vote of thanks for all our audiences and all of the resource partners involved into collaborating and different stages of setting up this live shows, and definitely for our audiences. Over to you, Greer, for the final vote of thanks.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you very much. I really want to thank my team at Medidia and GRS for giving up their time and sharing their knowledge and experience with you, the attendees. We're very passionate about regulations and compliance with quality requirements as being able to underpin your companies in order to be a successful entity. And we want to be able to showcase regulatory affairs as being your friend that provides structure so that you can build confidence in your company, in your customers, in your own team. So my thanks, my sincere thanks to my team, who I know have given up a lot of time this week to be able to share that knowledge with yourselves. I've also really want to thank our resource partners, Galway Chamber, Medilink Midlands, Fortiori Development, Zenon Health Solutions, GS1 Ireland, Health Innovation Hub Ireland, and of course the Embassy of India, Dublin in Ireland. The ambassador was very kind enough to join us in the opening ceremony. So thank you to all our resource partners for again giving up your time, sharing your knowledge. And I really hope this has demonstrated to everyone that there is this whole ecosystem out there that is very able and willing to support the diagnostic sector. You are moving into very different times ahead of you, requiring very different regulatory requirements that you need to adhere to. But there's this fantastic ecosystem that is there to support you. So please reach out to us. And finally, thank you to those diagnostic companies for being so creative and innovative and providing solutions to look after all our health now and for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greer, for the official vote of thanks. And once again, I would like to highlight all our resource partners and the different collaborators who have given their time, resource, and their talents to make this IVDR Celebration Week a huge success. Definitely not to forget, please cling on to IVDR Ready. That is the hashtag that you see down on your screens. Make sure that you subscribe to it and you add it to your favorites list, and you will get all the information firsthand. Well, with that, we would like to wind up this entire IVDR Celebration Week, but we will continue with hashtag being IVDR Ready. So yes, thank you once again to all our audiences for tuning in with us. Thank you to all our resource partners for collaborating with us. And thank you to all our team members for making sure this week was successful. With that, I will be taking your leave. And if there are any questions that you have, drop them at mdd@mddltd.com, and our experts will be there to be your regulatory risk partners for medical devices, diagnostics, and digital health. With that, I take your leave. Take care.